What the hell was that? Well, welcome to Paulogia and another edition of Ham and Egg News. Wow.
Paul, I'm young.
Lee Lemon? What's going on here? I didn't say your name.
Paul, Korea is like 15 hours ahead of you, so I already knew that you'd be saying my name, and I decided to appear preemptively just to make it easy. That's how time zones work, Paul.
I don't think that's how time zones work, Lee.
Well, I'm here before you ever said my name. Lee's not said, Lee shows up, there wasn't a miscommunication. You can't explain that.
You got me there. I guess we'll do the news.
We're all finally back again here, and we have a wonderful studio audience joining us today, so clap, make yourself known.
But fun fact, I have been in a live studio audience for An Answers News before.
Yeah, you had mentioned that in another video. Gosh, what happens when atheists come into contact with the truth? Did you burn?
Well, I did not convert.
Sounds like you got a hardened heart, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to sin.
God hardened your heart against him because he knew, just as I knew. Maybe God's in like advanced time, like he's in a different time zone. Maybe God's in Guam. And that's why he knows what you're going to do.
He knows what we're going to do.
That's what's
That
happening.
makes perfect sense.
And we just need to get rid of daylight savings time.
But then the roosters will take over the world.
Oh my God. They cock-a-doodle don't, okay?
Are you trying to compete with Bodie?
So I am not a dad, but I've learned the power of dad jokes. The dad jokes, like they cause so much cringe to happen that like that gives you life. Like I'm a cringe vampire.
Basically, I need their energy.
I feel like that would be a great sci-fi/horror flick. Dad jokes, and it's all about a creature that feeds on cringe.
Oh no. Oh, that would be good. Who would play? Bodie could play it.
That would be fantastic.
We'd all believe that he's sucking the life out of people's souls.
Yeah.
All right, I feel like we're off topic.
Here we are.
All right.
Right, I want to know something though. Why are we doing this at 7 o'clock at night?
You're still in Ireland time.
I'm still on island time.
They don't understand time zones either.
That's how it works. You can't understand time zones, Paul, because we don't understand the ways of God. The mysterious ways thing, that includes time zones.
Dr. Purdom and I were speaking at a conference in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and there was a real hunger over there in Ireland.
Over 400 people, and that for a
450,
conference in Ireland, a Christian conference, is huge because it's a very dark place.
So why would we expect the Republic of Ireland to be like super secular and what is a dark place? Like when I think of Ireland, I think of the Catholics.
Like a lot of Catholics.
You understand that Answers in Genesis does not consider Catholics to be Christians.
Oh, you know what? Yes. Okay. Disregard.
Because they believe in the evolution.
That's true. Yeah. And they have the Pope.
Don't want the church in Ireland to end up like it is in England, where the church compromised God's word in the foundation in Genesis, and now look what, less than 5% of people in England attend church.
Was he just talking about the Republic of Ireland? And then he's like, and then look what happened, blah, blah, England?
That's exactly what he did.
Like to confuse the Republic of Ireland with not just the UK, but England specifically. I mean, but Ken's what? He's from New Zealand?
No, from Australia.
No, he's from Papua New Guinea. It's the same, right?
No.
He's
Yes.
he's Papua New Guinea. That's it. That's it.
A lot of my readers are writing in the comments right now.
That's good.
Listeners, yeah, the Answers News tends to have these certain cautionary tale countries that they like to point to and say, this is where America will head if we don't buy our books and follow Can-Ham religion. And Canada and England are the two that they most like to point to and how terrible things are in Canada. And if we're not careful, it's going to be that bad here too. So buy our books.
I mean, but that's how those Papua New Guineans are, isn't it? They just like chase the money.
They chase the surf, Lee.
That's it. That's true. Well, in this case, he's riding the wave of, I don't know. I just like imagine him like Scrooge McDuck, but with pennies instead of gold coins.
But for a second, I was trying to imagine him like Patrick Swayze at the end of Point Break.
That's Bodhi. They call him the Bodhisattva. Guy's even crazier than you, Johnny.
I don't want to imagine him without his shirt. Is that body shaming? Am I body shaming an old Papua New Guinean creationist pastor?
I took it to mean you're trying to save yourself from lusting.
Oh, okay. Let's go with that one. Because want me a piece of ham. Oh, God. But pork is a sin.
And ham is causing us all to fall.
And worship at its mighty sausage.
Oh, now I've got this idea like a parody porn with Ken Ham.
Do you think that Rule 34 applies to Answers News?
I mean, that is Rule 34. It has
Please
to.
no one look it up.
And they had on the menu sticky toffee pudding
My official new favorite
with
dessert.
ice cream and cream. I always ordered it. You ordered it.
You eat all kinds of things on your channel. Have you ever had sticky toffee pudding?
I have not. I have had black pudding, which is the blood sausage, and I've had the Korean version of that as well. It's called sundae. If you ever go to Korea and you see like an English writing that says SUNDAE, it is not an ice cream sundae. It is like blood sausage. I do love black pudding. I think it tastes awesome. But I've never had sticky toffee pudding. But I guess pudding in the UK is, I don't know, they've evolved. Like we've evolved so differently that their words are just like nonsense sounding. The pudding is like a dessert, I think, right? Just that's the sort of the word for dessert. What kind of dessert is it? Is it a cake?
It is. I've had it.
Okay.
It is delicious.
Okay.
I think the delineation is the point at which you would eat your cake with a spoon or a fork. So if it's a fork, then you have a cake. And if you
So
have
where
a
I'm
spoon,
from, I
it's a
eat with my
pudding.
hands. So that doesn't help me. Like I'm not kidding.
People that follow my channel don't know that culturally I grew up differently from other people in the US. Like I eat with my hands, and like I changed my accent growing up because my accent was so made fun of by everybody that I was growing up near. And so like you should see me try to work with like a knife and fork to cut a steak, because that's not how we cook. We cut it and then we cook it. I look like a Neanderthal, like just working with that.
So that doesn't help me at all, because I don't, like, when I see cake, I just put it in my face. Like, that's it. There's no like, which utensil will be best for this? You know, I don't have that.
I look at that and I just think, I'm used to American-sized portions that fill up the plate and it's falling off the side.
That's why I didn't feel guilty ordering this.
I know. You can
Right?
eat it and not feel bad.
And see, look. See?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Don't lust as Ken talks about his body.
Ken, and he's like, look at me. And
He shows up in pants, and that's fine.
but then as soon as he sits, we don't know what's going on behind that. And that's why Bodie's not making eye contact.
Hopefully that's not why George is laughing.
That's why George is laughing. Oh no. Poor Ken. Look at Ken's face.
He looks so like upset by this. Like, Georgia, how dare you laugh?
But no, I hate that people think like, oh, it's a small portion, so I shouldn't feel guilty. You still gotta count calories, and you'd be surprised like how many calories they can pack into a small serving. Which is fine. Yeah, enjoy it sometimes. Because that's one of the things that I talk about too on my channel is fitness and health and stuff. Because I used to be about 280 pounds or like 135 kilos, lost all that weight, joined the Marines, and that's the thing you still have to do. You have to count calories. So don't follow Ken's advice. Ken's even bad with dietary advice. Like, does this guy get anything right?
All right, time to get on with the news here. All right, genome-wide study confirms 6 tiger subspecies. Now we know there's 6 subspecies, which means they're one step away, basically, from being their own species.
But they all still look like tigers, right?
They say it enables us to expand our genetic evidence on the tiger's evolutionary history. What are they? Tigers. What were they? Tigers. What will they be? Tigers.
Of course, one of the things they want to do is undermine speciation in general, because they can't deny speciation, but what they want to do is minimize it in people's minds. So if someone hears about a speciation event, that they can kind of in their head say, oh yeah, but that's just a technicality and a subspecies or whatever, right? They want to be able to.
Right. I grew up and I prided myself in having straight A's all the time. I failed biology in 10th grade, and I took that as a pride moment, because that meant that I wasn't indoctrinated by this like dirty evolution, believe in crazy teacher. Like, while we were talking about the evolutionary portion of the biology curriculum, I legit like moved my seat into the corner and I opened my Bible. Like, I would bring my Bible every day to class so I could read it while the teacher, like I was hoping to make a stand by showing like how devout I was. And, my church had always promised me that big, bold moves like that would always be rewarded by like the whole class converting and the teacher falling on her face to recognize the Holy Spirit's presence in the classroom, which never happened. All that happened is I did very poorly with biology. I only learned about evolution after I became atheist. And I thought, okay, now I'm not scared to learn it. Let's check it out. And it was just so so simple. Like, it was so
Right.
obvious. There's so many books that Answers in Genesis make, so they have to make it seem ridiculously complex, and that it's so convoluted, and because it doesn't seem intuitive, therefore they believe something else. I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I finally decided to learn about evolution, and wow, it's so simple. I couldn't believe it. What about for you, Paul? Because I know you grew up young Earth creationist.
All of the simplicity and beauty and explanatory power of evolution completely eluded me until I was able to let go of the straw man version of evolution that creationists think is evolution. You know, nothing exploded and then goo came alive and a monkey gave birth to a person. But once I was finally humble enough to set that aside and let biologists explain what evolution actually is, I agree, it made sense immediately. But it can be very hard to let go of the constructs we build in our head. You know, Kent Hovind doesn't think broccoli could have evolved.
Why did they pick the examples that are just
Like the banana or the broccoli, like they're so obviously human intervention. Why can't they choose like anything, like a coconut? Maybe it goes back to that thing that we were talking about before, where it's like it's the English-speaking world. That's all they care about.
That's all they know is like broccoli and bananas. Like they can't think of like a
If
durian.
it's not at their supermarket, then...
Right. If it's not at their supermarket wrapped in plastic, it's not a real food. It's one of those dirty savage foods.
And they're for sure never going into a Whole Foods, so...
That's run by liberals, which is basically communism.
That's the kind of fruit that Stalin would have eaten.
It's hard and it stinks. Actually, durian's delicious. I guess it's sort of like a devil's fruit because it kind of tricks you. It's covered in spikes. And when you crack it open, it smells awful. There's no accurate way to describe that smell. It's trash, it's urine, it's fecal matter, it's like a general sewage kind of smell, death. I mean, it smells horrible. There's no way somebody would walk by and be like, oh, look at this horrible looking thing that smells horrible as well. I better put it in my mouth.
So you're saying that if God had made the tree of knowledge of fruit, good and evil, if that had been a durian instead of an apple...
Oh, yeah, we'd still be living forever. And it actually specifically describes serpents as the craftiest or most cunning, depending on which translation you read, of God's creatures. That snakes are more crafty than us. And there's no way, even at that level that snakes are above us, there's no way they could have convinced them to eat a durian. So that's it. We've just proven that I am smarter than God. Because if I wanted to put a fruit that I didn't want people to eat, it would be the durian.
God created the original kinds with a lot of genetic diversity. And so over time, what happens is natural selection acts and other mechanisms act on that diversity. And so you get this speciation.
They know that you can't produce a viable population off of that, right? I mean, we saw what happens to like the Russian royal family. You can't just keep having sex with your kind if your kind is your family. Like that doesn't work, you know, no matter what they will tell you in the Ozarks, that doesn't work.
But you get it happening actually really quickly. I mean, evolutionists think it takes millions of years to do this, but this study shows, no, it doesn't really take that long at all. We've got 6 just about to become a new species.
You know, there's 2 of every animal on the ark, which is different depending on which part of Genesis you read.
That's not enough for
proper speciation. And with cheetahs, like we can see that with cheetahs, and there were as few as, I guess, 7 individual cheetahs due to a really bad, almost extinction event.
Well, what they would say is that all of the kinds were created genetically perfect. But that because of sin, genetic entropy has been acting over time to make everything worse and worse with each generation. So while it used to be okay to breed with close relatives, sin and genetic entropy has ruined that for everyone. The flood happened close enough to perfection to still have all the good genes. But 4,000 years later, we're basically genetic garbage.
Now go back to all these animals that they're talking about coming from just 2 parents.
How are they going to go and like super diversify?
If their genetic material is basically the same, like the same problem that we have that prevents cheetahs from being diverse, they're saying is allowing these guys to be diverse.
You can't have sex with your mom and like keep doing that and then end up with like a viable population. Like they understand that, right? Do they understand?
There's more subspecies than there are species.
That's the least remarkable claim ever. Of course,
I know, right?
The Linnean classification system is a hierarchy and a natural pyramid. Of course, there'll be more instances in the lower groups than the higher. I'm not sure what kind of gotcha this was supposed to be.
They're never going to be anything other than a cat, unless you're a Tasmanian tiger. Tasmanian tiger's a dog, actually.
Yeah.
But they just call it a tiger.
I mean, good on Bodie for catching that. Good. Good one, Bodie. Put that engineering degree to use. I love it, because he hasn't said anything for a bit, you know. Poor Bodie.
Yeah, I think as far as Tasmania, it might be extinct.
It might be extinct? Did Bodie just say the Tasmanian tiger might be extinct? Is that was his...
Like, the thing you learn about the Tasmanian tiger, like, before you learn anything else, is that it is extinct. You know what I mean? Like this, that's what you learn. Like, this is the last picture or the video of the Tasmanian tiger that we ever had. Like,
Bodie is just, oh my gosh. Like, I was proud of him for a second.
I really was.
So somebody here said, oh, it's actually one of our friends in Australia. G'day from Park Ridge, Queensland, 5 a.m. Friday here. What's he doing getting up at 5 a.m.?
It's all about the time zones.
It is.
You foresaw all of this.
He's not really at 5 a.m. That's 5 a.m. when Ken Ham checked it. But in reality, it's like whatever bidet time that it is.
The cat kind is a key to understanding history.
Now I'm curious because, people always talk about the kangaroos and how fast they would have to go to get away from Mount Ararat after the flood went away. And so what is like the marsupial kind's like parent kind or parent animal? Do you know what I mean?
According to Answers in Genesis, there are at least 7 marsupial kinds that they break down basically at the order level.
Okay.
For example, kangaroo and wallaby are both in the kangaroo kind.
Okay.
But the wombat is in the musky rat kind.
Okay. So what's a kind?
A kind represents each distinct animal group that God made during creation week that were able to bring forth.
What about
with
the
each other.
quokka? The quokka? What about him?
The quokka is part of the kangaroo kind.
What about the possum? Like which kind was that part of
AiG
the?
says the opossum was its own kind, and they were in North America.
No, not the opossum. The possum.
Oh well, the possum is part of the possum kind.
There's a possum. It looks really cute. Like the opossum is the magic trash rat is what they look like. But like the possum is like smaller and cuter, and I believe it's still a marsupial.
Yes, they're different kinds.
Is a wombat a marsupial?
They are marsupial in AiG's wombat kind.
I'm just like, to me, everything Australia is all marsupial. Are they all marsupials? Is that where we're going here?
They also have snakes.
Yeah. So what's like the king marsupial? The koala is its own.
Are you talking real science or
No?
Answers in Genesis science?
Answers in Genesis science.
Then those are all different kinds.
Right.
Do you have some kind of marsupial checklist you've memorized?
What about like monotremes?
Those aren't marsupials, they lay eggs. The monotremes have 2 different kinds, the echidna kind and the platypus kind.
Okay, there's a bandicoot. That's a kind. That's not a kind. That's
the bandicoot kind.
That's a marsupial.
Also true.
The Tasmanian devil's a marsupial. See, that's what I mean. Everything's a marsupial. See, I thought the Tasmanian devil would be like closer to like a badger or a wolverine, but apparently it's the wolverine kind. So anytime you hurt it, it just regenerates, and they're really old, and you don't know how old they are. So all of these left from Mount Ararat and like went to Australia and went to North America and went to South America, and then we got marsupials everywhere. So there's got to be like one like main marsupial, like the king marsupial, I'm going to call it, because we're just making up words now since, we're Answers in Genesis this. And so the king marsupial would have had to spread out and then become the different kinds of marsupials. So there's got to be like a marsupial in common then.
No. You're talking about a single tree of life where things go back to common ancestors. But AiG goes with created kinds, which is an orchard of life where different lineages have been entirely separate since creation week. So there's an opossum kind, bandicoot kind, koala kind, wombat kind, possum kind, kangaroo kind. And none of those are related to each other.
Thank you.
They've also proposed that marsupials are particularly well suited to make the sprint from Ararat to Australia because they could carry young in their pouches and not have to make kid-related stops along the way. This makes sense if you're a parent.
Okay, is Ararat on Pangea? Is that how this works?
Well, according to Answers in Genesis, it was all one big continent when the rain fell.
Yeah.
And then all the world's plate tectonics happened at crazy speeds during the flood.
Okay. So we're one continent. Like I'm just trying to imagine this handful of marsupial kinds. They decided to just like one went south and one went north. And
you're now touching on the straw that broke the camel's back for me when it came to young Earth creationism. I was seeking all the affirming evidence of that position in Ken Ham's answer books, and I got to the question about how kangaroos got to Australia, and the answer Ken gave was they floated there on logs.
I'm sorry, were you talking or did I just have a stroke for a moment there?
Well, it's better than the alternate theory.
Is it?
And that's the point where the book fell out of my hands.
That's it.
Hit the floor, and I said,
wow.
I can't be a young Earth creationist anymore.
Yeah. Man, that's difficult. That's difficult. I mean, I know kangaroos are pretty badass, but I can't imagine a bunch of kangaroo kinds jumped onto this like, yeah, I'm a kangaroo and I'm okay. I jump on logs to get to good day. Is that how that works?
Sure.
No? Okay. That's Australia's new name, by the way. I renamed it to good day. That's what we're doing. We're doing that stuff in the future. You'll catch up. You'll find out that I'm right.
All right, the psychological reasons why you don't forget the songs you listened to as a teenager.
The saddest part for me was that when I was a teenager, I didn't listen to the devil music. I listened only to contemporary Christian rock, which, as
the good stuff. The good stuff.
everyone knows, is objectively terrible music.
No, that's the good stuff. Okay, Paul. I mean, let me tell you right now, if I turn on some Newsboys, you're going to sing along. Breakfast, something, drop their hankies. Some our friend was odd. That day he bought those pine pajamas. His check was good with God. Those here without the Lord, how do you cope? For this morning we don't mourn like those who have no hope. So rise up, Fruit Loot lovers, sing out sweet and low. When spoons held high, we give our brother Cheerio. When the milk has burned and all the toast has turned, something the wrong bin, some Captain Crunch is waving farewell. When the big one finds you, may this song remind you that they don't serve breakfast in hell. You remember that? You remember that song?
I do remember that song.
Okay, so why weren't you singing with me?
I'm a touch older than you. Amy Grant, Petra, Michael W. Smith, Whiteheart, Jars of Clay.
Crying to the Lord. Lead me on to a place where the river runs into your keeping.
Those are the ones burned into my brain forever, whether I want them or not.
Where it's a new species of crocodile called the Central African slender-snouted crocodile that's in Central Africa. And they say it's distinct from its West African cousin because it has smaller, softer scales and it's missing a bony nub.
I was trading bony nub jokes with Vice Rhino on Twitter.
Notice that Georgia now is drinking. She's got to hide her face. She knows this is evolution because that's what she's studied. She understands that. I really hate the fact they just have to lie about this stuff. I think that's what upset me when I learned about evolution. Like I thought, like, if I was a Christian, that wouldn't have threatened my understanding of God and stuff. You know, the age of the earth didn't threaten my understanding of God at the time. I think I was just more upset that they like expected that I would be so stupid that I couldn't comprehend this stuff, so they had to lie to me. Ken Ham or these pastors have to have such a disdain for their listeners to talk to them the way they do and to talk down to them and to just expect them to just swallow all this stuff. But I mean, we were those listeners. We swallow this stuff because this is where we're getting our information from.
Yeah, I was very much taught that authority is the ultimate source.
And they take our trust and they just totally just shit all over it. And I think that's what really upset me. Not really, I guess sad is a better word for it than angry.
Well, it varies from organism to organism how they decide if it should be declared a new species.
There's Georgia being almost right again.
She is really there to undermine them.
They're looking for different species, right? So it says poring over museum specimens in the search for really subtle differences was tedious work. Subtle differences. Yeah. I mean, I can look at the studio audience in this room, and there are not subtle differences.
You know that
right?
joke that all insert group of people here look the same? It's because they can recognize the difference between our own group, but to everybody else, well, they look so different from me that they all look the same. I remember my Mandarin professor, she was from Taiwan, and she said something, and then she's like, well, you know, all white people look the same. And everybody starts laughing, but it's the same idea. So for Ken to be able to see the difference in his own kind, quote unquote, is not remarkable because the alligators are going to definitely notice a difference. And that's what they're doing here with the alligators. We're just finding these tiny differences that do make a difference, but to somebody like Ken, it's not going to make a difference. So when they go through this and try to make it seem like the scientists are nitpicking or even worse, having an idea and then trying to force fit the evidence to the idea, that's what they're kind of implying here with this. And it's nothing like that at all. It's that there are legitimate differences. That's all it is. It's nothing different. It's nothing new. It's nothing covert. Remember, we can't be crafty like that. That's what serpents do, not us.
Well, it said they diverged 8 million years ago. But again,
imaginary time.
Yeah, imaginary time. Like, where are they getting that? It's just a few thousand years ago, and probably it occurred as a result of some sort of geographical isolation that came about as a result of the flood.
Right.
They separated.
An imaginary time. I'm surprised they went that way, opposed to, see, it's been 8 million years and they still haven't diverged.
Well, they like to play both cards.
That's true. They play for both teams. They're, what is that, bi-knowledgeable? I wouldn't say knowledge. What's the word I'm looking for?
By ignorant.
There we go. By ignorance. Bignorant. It's a very good word.
But here's what they said. They said, Bodie, did you clear it with your mummy before you brought the Unwrapping the Pharaohs book on stage?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I love it.
He likes puns.
I don't believe that was a comment. I believe that Bodhi just thought, I haven't talked for a while, I haven't plugged anything for a while, and I have definitely not made a pun in a while, so I'm just going to pretend I'm reading something, and this is what I'm legitimately saying.
And they come up to me and say, why did dinosaurs become extinct? I say, why are you always worried about dinosaurs? What about the dodo
about all
bird?
the other stuff?
Nobody cares about the dodo bird.
Why do they focus on the dinosaurs? Well, number one, we weren't there. We want to know how this happened. This is what we're interested in. We know how the dodo went extinct. We know exactly how the dodo went extinct. They just ate it. Like, that's how it went extinct. It was delicious and easy to catch, and they didn't have any natural predators, so they had zero defenses, and they were just big and easy, delicious. We know how they went extinct. And then the other issue is, why did they ask about the dinosaurs? It's because, according to creationists like Ken Ham, the dinosaurs lived with people. So what happened to the dinosaurs, Ken? If all of these animals that you say were coexisting with humans were there before the flood, and now they don't exist after the flood, how did all of them go extinct?
The other part is that dinosaurs are so different from everything else we've seen that it's easy to capture a kid's imagination, something that's
Right.
several stories tall with giant teeth. It's just cool. It's kind of like the same way a North American gets excited about seeing an elephant or a giraffe. It's so
Right.
different than what you see.
Or a
that
durian.
It's fascinating. Right.
What happened to them, Ken? You say that they were there, you say they were on the ark, and then what happened to them? Do they have an answer for that?
They, of course, think that some dinosaurs lived up until like the 1500s so that they could become part of dragon legends.
Were they all slayed by the knights? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, but as somebody who is from a totally different culture, the idea that we're just going to explain everything away with knights slaying dragons, when we have all these cultures where dragons were revered, they would not slay a dragon. So how come they're not still around in those cultures?
There's a reason they don't have an Answers in Genesis in Korea. They have an Answers in Genesis in Kentucky.
They could make an Answers in Genesis in Korea. So Christianity is not unpopular. It's just not a major religion here. The types that they have here are pretty crazy. Like, they're all like the Pentecostal holy rollers type. And so they wanted to get evolution either taken out of textbooks or to have like a mark, like that this is just one idea of how this happened and there's many viable theories, whatever, and this is just one version we're presenting. They had put that out. And then, like, for 3 months, nobody said anything. So all these people on the education board, they were, getting these, letters about it. And they were like, oh, you're serious? Oh, my goodness, no, sweetie, no, we can't do that. So, like, nobody did anything about it because they thought it was a joke. So, like, Answers in Genesis, I think, could do really well here for that type of Christian because they would feel oppressed. They would feel underrepresented in the population. And they're that type of, like, psychotic. Like, a great example is there'll be some kind of LGBT thing in the news. And they all have the same response. I'm Christian, so I have to hate gay people. And what a phrasing to say. And it breaks my heart every time. And it's not just like one type of Christian in one type of place. And they all phrase it the same way. I'm Christian, so I have to hate gay people.
This 4,500-year-old ramp contraption may have been used to build Egypt's Great Pyramid.
Why would we be surprised at that?
We shouldn't be.
But it's an intelligent thing to do. And,
It really
often they
is.
try to characterize ancient man. Like, again, they don't believe man could have built the pyramids. He had to have alien help, right? He couldn't have just done this. But people are intelligent, and they can devise ingenious things
Right.
to do this because we're not involved from some sort of ape-like creature. We're created in the image of God. And so we have that creativity and that intelligence.
They don't specifically say it, but it is implied by their phrasing that if you don't believe in a young Earth creation, then you must believe that aliens built the pyramids because people are too stupid to build a pyramid. To suggest that we have to think the Egyptians are lesser because they're older and therefore less evolved doesn't make any sense. We are not different from ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians are modern humans, and modern humans have been around for a long time, at least 100,000 years. And even, if you want to go back to the different ancestors, in human evolution, Australopithecus was creative. Homo erectus, same deal. They explored more of the land around them. Neanderthal, as we found out more about them, we found out they had art. They had burial rituals. All throughout our ape-like ancestors, that, to use Georgia's phrasing, we've had this creativity. And of course, it's not, just for humans. Other animals are creative. There's a species of bird that will drop an oyster or a clam onto rock That way they can get this delicious fresh clam meat without having to try to fight with it. What a cool thing. Or with rats, like they can figure out how to get chocolate out of a setup that involves several things in a succession to get the chocolate. Problem solving and this concept of cause and effect is not just in humans, but in so many different species that even pigeons will create superstitions about how to get food. That is so cool. And to sit here and not recognize that we are just one animal among many on Earth. We're not the best. We're not the worst. We're just here. We're just existing. We're having a good time. And to just throw all of that away and say, man is best because God. I mean, what a short-sighted, arrogant, willfully ignorant approach. Oh, it's such an intelligence killer, a science killer, a creativity killer. It's such a sad thing. I don't want to just say, well, God did it. I'm not going to explore anything else. I'm not going to get into all this cool stuff that we could learn because I'm already going to satisfy myself with an answer. Just because Christians say that they have an answer doesn't mean it's the answer. And that's what really upsets me. They just really want to kill discussion, and I'm so against that.
They've got an evolutionary view of history, thinking people before us aren't as good as us. We've evolved more highly.
After the bubonic plague in the 1300s, the bubonic plague killed off people who weren't already immune to the plague. So that means the people left over are immune to the plague for the most part. That doesn't mean that the people before them were less evolved. It doesn't mean that they were dumber or lesser. It just means that there was an environmental event that happened to favor one genetic trait over another. That's it. Like, nobody's making this claim, Ken. What a silly thing to say that the Egyptians were less evolved, especially, again, because the ancient Egyptians are the same thing that we are today. They are modern humans. They are not like Homo Egyptalis, you know? They're the same thing that we are.
Ken's audience thinks that the March of Man picture accurately represents what evolution is.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a linear progression towards a goal, humanity. Right. And then the earlier forms are therefore necessarily inferior to future forms.
Absolutely. And just to use the March of Man example, if I go to a chimpanzee's natural environment, I'm not going to be the better evolved one. You know what I mean? People that just don't understand evolution like to think is that maybe the chimpanzee, which we didn't evolve from, is somehow lesser than us. I mean, if you believe that, go into a chimpanzee's natural environment and tell me how well you survive. Strip naked, get rid of all your tools, do exactly what the chimpanzees do, follow what they do, and see how well you can do that.
If you did that and filmed it, you definitely have a hit YouTube channel on your hands.
Okay, we can call it Insane Goodall.
If you guys are familiar with just about anything in archaeology, they're basing this on what's called the Egyptian dates. And those dates can extend all the way back, 10,000 years old. And what they did is they took all the pharaohs and they took how long they reigned, which was recorded by a man named Manetho. And what they did is they just added them one on top of the other. And so that adds this great age up to 10,000 years. But here's the problem. Egypt had three kingdoms, a lower, middle, and an upper. So a lot of these guys were reigning at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so what these guys did, like David Down, is they said, well, let's go up there and see who was co-reigning against each other. And it actually brought the chronologies down somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 years off from, say, Archbishop James Ussher.
So paraphrasing from Bodie, he's basically saying they took dates from the different reigns of the pharaohs. And the problem with this is that Egypt had three kingdoms, a lower kingdom, a middle kingdom, and an upper kingdom. So the problem was they weren't reigning after each other, they were reigning at the same time, and if you factor that in, you get a young Earth post-flood acceptable time period. So the problem is that Bodie, first of all, should say there's an upper and lower kingdom in pre-unified Egypt. The middle kingdom is a different concept, which has nothing to do with physicality. There was Old Kingdom, a Middle Kingdom, and a New Kingdom, and these are just periods of time in Egyptian history. I mean, just for ease of understanding, there's an old period, a middle period, and a new period. And in between these periods, there were different times of like war and famine, things like that. So Bodie had confused that the Middle Kingdom was a physical kingdom, and it's not. It is upper and lower. That was united by Pharaoh Menes, like 3100 BCE. So we're going back 5,000 years. Oh shit, it's pre-flood, you know? And he talks about Manetho, who had stacked up a bunch of stuff. He says he's pre-Jesus, he predates Jesus, and he had written down all these pharaohs and stuff. So we're talking this argument from authority fallacy. Thank you, Bodie, for providing us another fallacy. the kingdoms aren't just based on what is written down by Manetho. They're not only based on other things like the king's list, but things like how old certain fabrics and stuff that we found in different pharaohs' tombs, how old those are, using, radiocarbon dating, for example, that it goes to the same time period that is listed in a king's list. We're able to validate that or verify that using a different scientific field. So you don't have to be an Egyptologist to understand when different pharaohs reigned. There's also corroborating evidence from other cultures, the Nubians to the south. There was the Mesopotamians, there was the Greeks, the Macedonians. Some of them actually took over Egypt for a while. They were called the Hyksos, and that just meant like foreigner. It was the Egyptian word for foreigner. All of this allows us to corroborate this. This is not just some guy at some point in time wrote things down and then all Egyptologists totally believe it. This is totally verified in multiple ways, is what I want to say.
What it is Google Maps, instead of directing people to abortion clinics, it's actually the MAP program is directing them to crisis pregnancy centers. So the abortion centers are blaming Google and saying that the pro-life places are getting in there and basically making it so that they're seen as something that's an abortion provider when they're really not. So it's blaming them, saying they're lying.
So what's happening? This is no different than what we do at Answers in Genesis and what other groups do, what everyone does. And that is, there's certain keywords and phrases that we work with in regard to the Google search engine, so that when people type in certain keywords or phrases, our website will come up.
100% agree. Paul, you probably put in a ton of different keywords, right, when you make your videos?
Definitely. I'm much more interested in having Christians watch my video than someone who already agrees with me. So I try to include the kind of keywords that a Christian might search.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. People that are interested in creationism are going to be interested in something that I'm saying. Whether they agree with me or not is different. The problem was that these clinics that do not provide abortion services were listing abortion services in their keywords. That is lying. And their whole reason behind it was that they wanted to basically trick people into coming in, because there's this belief that they have that if they show you the ultrasound, that you will want to keep the pregnancy. Now, remember, most of these women want the pregnancy. They want to see the pregnancy fall through. They just cannot do it for whatever reason, a lot of times a health reason. So all you're doing is breaking their hearts further. And the studies show that if you do this, it doesn't actually deter people from going through with the abortion. So all the stuff that we're taught in church about that being the case is not the case. And that's the problem, is that it wasn't a key word because they're interested in both sides of the argument, whatever. So they were lying to women that were already in a very stressed, highly emotional, upsetting state. Maybe they were able to take time off of work to come do this, and now they wasted their time to be talked down to be reminded of the fact that they cannot have this child, which may be breaking their hearts already. That's why people were contacting Google. They were saying that they shouldn't be allowed to list abortion services as a keyword if they don't perform abortion services. It's like they have this idea that pregnant people are like pregnant, and then they're just like, haha, Lord Satan, it is time for me to kill this baby. And then when they show up to the clinic and they're not able to provide an abortion, they'll be like, oh, blast. The believers of the one true God have tricked us again, Lord Satan. Like, that's not at all what's happening. They're trying to manipulate people with emotional appeals that have been shown not to work by lying to them. That is so bad. That is so awful. So if you look at the article that Answers in Genesis linked, I'm quoting, "We know that many of these organizations will give women inaccurate and potentially harmful information. For example, telling them that abortion causes breast cancer, alcohol dependency, and will prevent them from loving their children." So aside from the fact that it's already lying to them to write abortion services in the keywords just to get them to come over there, they continue to lie to them on top of that. They're abusing people that are in an emotionally receptive or emotionally distraught state. And that's so reprehensible. I don't know how that's not illegal. How is that legal? I mean, this is lying for Jesus. Lying for Jesus in a way that is medically dangerous.
Well, obviously there are free speech implications.
I'm so in favor of free speech. I am so in favor of free speech. I support people's right to say things that are untrue and stupid. I get a lot of hate for the fact that I think hate speech should be protected, because what we consider hate speech can vary so much based on what the current population believes. I mean, what we're doing, Paul, this is hate speech, according to some Christians. So I definitely support hate speech. I'm fine with all of that. But I don't support misleading people intentionally in a way that could kill them. I mean, that's not a type of speech that's protected, right? If I scream fire in a crowded area and there's no fire and people die as a result, that's not protected by free speech. How is this any different? Like, I'm legitimately asking you, this is not a rhetorical question. How is this any different?
Well, first, if you're talking about making something illegal, then you're talking about getting the government involved. And getting involved not just in the public square, but also impacting a private business. In this case, Google. The whole yelling fire in a crowded theater example comes from a Supreme Court case in 1919 that established the level of free speech restriction to clear and present danger, which remained the U.S. standard for over 50 years until there was a case of the KKK leader, and the Supreme Court actually softened the rules, saying that the marketplace of ideas is best served, allowing speech up to the level of imminent lawless action. So at least in the U.S., that's the new standard. Imminent lawless action. And harming yourself isn't illegal. Now, if anyone's seen my video about Eric Hovind selling cyanide as a cancer cure, you'll know that the Food and Drug Administration has the power to restrict the manner in which a product can be sold and associated with unsupported medical claims. So you can provide a fraudulent book about how eating apricot seeds will cure cancer, and you can sell such apricot seeds, but you can't do both.
If you're going to make a statement about a health claim and you cannot verify it, or the evidence shows the direct opposite, I don't think you should have that book published. And I feel kind of gross saying that because I'm very against banning books. But there's a difference between this topic makes me uncomfortable and this topic is so factually wrong that people die if they follow the advice. Do you know what I mean? If you give this advice to gullible people, they're gonna fucking die. How is that considered free speech? I don't understand.
Listen, I look at this story as a marketplace of ideas one and as a business freedom one. The last thing I'm interested in is the government having new powers to tell a search engine what the results can be. But these people complaining did exactly what they should do. These women were using Google to try to find abortion services, and the results Google gave them led them away from the result they wanted. Google's sole interest should be in providing the most helpful results to their users. And if Google isn't giving the user the results they want, they'll start searching elsewhere. So of course Google is and should be concerned with the balance between taking an advertiser's money and whether their users' needs are being met, because one will harm the other. Google already has a policy against advertising a service that is designed to mislead, so they're covered in restricting this if they want to be. From a purely capitalistic perspective, everything is right about what went on here. The business should operate unfettered, led by the needs and desires of their customers. No need for the government here.
Post in the comments section. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah,
You know we've run out of time.
Abortion clinic impartial.
I know. I'm aware of that.
That's because you talk. That's because you talk too much.
We're trying to talk to people about being skeptical, being rational, and understanding, where the brain, makes mistakes and why it makes mistakes. And that's okay. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you stupid. But now that you know, if you continue to not fix your beliefs, you are being willfully ignorant. And are you okay with that? I think that's all my channel is really about, Food stuff is a little different.
You're talking to a guy who has a show called Ham and Egg News, yet never once talks about breakfast.
That's true, because maybe I tuned in because I wanted news on ham and eggs. There are a lot of interesting things they're doing with pigs these days. Instead, what did I get? I got durians shaped like Ken Ham's dick.
There's a perfect closing if I've ever heard one.
I think this is a good time.
To keep the good time going, click on one of these videos for more Paulogia adventures. That top looks pretty good.
Yeah.